Hello students, in the previous video lecture I explained the OOPS concepts from a general point of view, and in this video lecture we are going to look at OOPS from the technical point of view. So I will be using the exact C++ based examples to explain the various concepts of OOPS. To start with, say the most important thing you have to understand when you start learning object oriented programming is the meaning of an object. So without properly understanding the meaning of an object, it will be very difficult for you to understand the various OOPS concepts. So I'm just going to start with a general example before moving on to the actual explanation. So I'm considering this television as a object. The reason is that what we mean by a television is that it is a component which has got some data and some behavior. The data that are all part of the television are channels. So every TV has got a certain number of channels which you can increment or decrement. So you can only go to the extent of the maximum channels that are provided within that particular television. So number of channels is a data, fixed data. And number 2, volume. So you can similarly you can also change the volume. So volume can be increased or decreased, but again there is an upper limit beyond which you cannot increase the volume. And similarly the color, you can also adjust the color. I'm just taking 3 sample, but there are many more information that are available with the television which users can modify. So this is this is an object, and it has got some data which can be manipulated by the user according to his preference. Now the next big question is that how can I manipulate these data, or how can I change the values of these data? In the past, the TV used to have the buttons within itself, that there used to be integrated buttons in the TV sets through which we can operate. But nowadays to keep it very thin, there are no buttons available in the TV set. So in that case, how can I change the channels, how can I change the volume, and how can I adjust the color? The only option we have got is the remote control. So the remote control is the only interface through which we can manipulate these data which are available within the object or the TV set. So using the remote control, I can change the channel, I can adjust the volume, I can also adjust the color, and I cannot do anything else other than what is provided in the remote set. The remote control is it's fixed, and it has got specific functions as determined by the manufacturer, and I can only make use of those controls for modifying the television's behavior. And I can I can also turn off using the power button. So these are all the various options provided within the remote control for me to make use of the TV set or to change the various data. But what if I have what if I have lost my remote control? It's as if your television becomes useless. So if you have lost a remote control, until you either you find it back or you replace it by a new remote control, you cannot use your television. That is a condition. Imagine that I have some other TV in my home. Let's say it's a Samsung television for which there is a separate remote control, and this one is a Sony television. Can I use my Samsung remote for operating the Sony television? You know very well that it is not possible, even though they both are almost the same. Only the brand is different. They both have volume control, they both have channel change options, and they both have the setting to change the color. But still, the remote control of the Samsung will not work with the television of the Sony. Similarly, the Sony remote won't work with Samsung. That is precisely how the objects are going to be made in C++. So whenever an object is created, it is going to comprise of some data which can be manipulated by the user. But how you manipulate and in what are the possible manipulations is going to be fixed with the help of the methods that are also included within that object. So every object will have, the object is a bundle of data and behavior. So data is nothing but the states, and behaviors are termed as methods. So for example, if you take the example we discussed, that is TV, it's an object, and the various states we can define for the TV are there is a brand name, there is a size, and there is a that is screen size, and type, which can be LED or LCD or CRT, and similarly channel volume. If you closely notice these states, you can see that some states are constant. The brand cannot be changed, the size cannot be changed, similarly the type, but you can change the value of the channel and also the value of the volume. So that is you can increment the channels, decrement, similarly you can increment or decrement the volume. Now what about behaviors? So the behaviors are possibly like this. You can turn on the television using the power button, similarly you can turn it off, and you can change the volume, you can also change the channel. Another example is let's consider an object of a student class. So a student is treated as an object. In that case, his the student's characteristics or states are name, age, gender, register number, CGPA, and the year or semester he is studying. And similarly, again in this also we can see some states are static, they cannot be changed, the name cannot be changed, the gender cannot be changed. But on the other hand, CGPA will change every year. Similarly, the year or semester will also keep changing, age also will be changing. Now behavior is, the student may be studying, or he is writing an exam, or he may be attending a class. So these are the various possible behaviors, and only these behaviors are allowed for the student. Now if you want to create an object for that particular example of a student object, then this is the class definition. This is exactly the way we are going to define the classes in C++ in order to create the desired object. So here we have expressed what is our object should look like. We want it to be in the name of student, and we want it to have these states, and we want these behaviors to control these states. Now in that case, this is how the class is defined. Class, name of the class as student, opening brace to indicate that the class definition begins, and then we list out the members. First we start with all the states or the data members, which is the name, gender, age, CGPA, and year. So the data types are appropriately chosen. For example, name is supposed to be a string, age is generally a int. So we have chosen the data types accordingly. And once you finish the states or the data members, now you move on to the methods. The first method is a study method, where you will be writing the necessary code to implement it. Similarly, there is another method in the name of write exams. So this class is now fixed. It has only these members, and it has only these two methods. So the only way you can manipulate these data members is with the help of these two methods. So you can either apply study to the student or write exams to the student. Now the next concept is the encapsulation. So encapsulation is the mechanism that binds together code and the data that it manipulates. That's what we just saw. So here a class is it's an example of an encapsulation. So inside a class, we encapsulate the data members with their appropriate methods. And in an object-oriented language, code and data may be combined in such a way that a self-contained black box is created. So we cannot divide them. Once we have created a class and then we made an object out of that, then it becomes bound together. We can never separate them. We can never take away the data out of the object. Similarly, we can't insert any other method into the object. So when code and data are linked together in this fashion, then we can claim that an object is created. In other words, an object is the product of encapsulation. I'm going to show a little more example to understand this point. Let us say I'm creating an object for out of the class student. So the class we just now we defined. For that I want to create a new object. That new object is to represent a student called Raja. So I'm just naming it as Raja underscore object. So I have created a new object. Now this object is now capable of accessing all the members of the class, which means it can access all these data members and also these two methods. So with the help of it I can make use of the first function call is made as a Raja underscore object dot study. This will work perfectly since it's part of the class and the part of the object. Similarly, I can also invoke the other method called write exam with the help of the object, and that is also already included into the class. So it will also be treated as valid by the compiler. But imagine I try to make a call to a method which is not part of the class. So there is no method called increase CGPA which is provided in that particular class. Now what will happen is that this will be treated as a violation, and that is essentially what we refer as encapsulation. So through encapsulation we combine some data members with some methods. Once that is completed, these data members can only be accessed by the provided methods, and no other new method can manipulate that particular set of data methods. And this is also a way of we can understand access control. So only the methods of the class can access the members, the data members of the class, and no outside method can access it. So and adding new methods or modifying existing methods can be only done at the class level. So let's say I actually want to have a method called increase CGPA which is needed for my purpose. In that case what you have to do is that you have to go back to that particular class definition and add a new method in the name of increase CGPA. After that if you make a call, then that this call will be now then treated as valid. So that is the only way you can upgrade a or update a class. You can't directly do it at the object level because object is a finished product. It's a finished product. You can't make any change into an object. Changes are only acceptable at the class level. That's what this point is iterating. Adding new methods or modifying existing methods can be only done at the class, not at the object. The next similar related concept is abstraction. So through abstraction we could hide the complexity from the user by not revealing the implementation details. For example, to calculate the CGPA, let's say we have defined the method called compute CGPA inside the class with the necessary logic. So we have applied some formula which will correctly calculate the CGPA. Once that is completed at the class level, now whoever want to calculate the CGPA, they simply have to make a call to that particular method in the form of object name dot the method name. Automatically the CGPA will be computed for that particular object or that particular student. So I don't need to know what is the formula used inside that method or what is the logic used in that method in order to use it. For usage I just need to make a call to the method and the result will be computed. This idea is called abstraction. Abstraction is the ability to hide the complex implementation details from the user and allowing the user to use the methods in a simple way. That's what we have achieved through abstraction in the given example. The next the important concept of OOPS is called polymorphism. So polymorphism, object-oriented programming languages support polymorphism, which is categorized by the phrase one interface, multiple methods. So I'm going to show you an example for that. So in simple terms, polymorphism is the attribute that allows one interface to control access to a general class of actions. Now consider this example, a flask. So what is this, how is it related to polymorphism is that a flask is one component, but it is capable of behaving in two different ways. That is, let's say I put a coffee inside a hot coffee inside the flask, then it will automatically keep the coffee hot for the given duration. But next day if I put cool drinks inside the flask, it will not make it hot, it will keep it cold. So it will switch the behavior accordingly, according to what is put inside or what is poured inside it. It will either behave as a hot container or it will behave as a cold container. That is the idea of that is the advantage of a flask. In the same way, there are situations while writing programs where we want two behaviors to be achieved, but without writing two different interfaces. So single interface should facilitate two different behaviors, which was impossible in C, but it is possible in C++. I'm going to now show you a C++ based example. So let us consider that we want to implement a stack. Hope you are aware of what is a stack. A stack is a storage medium. That is, you can store data inside a stack. But the problem is that a stack has to be, while defining a stack, we have to specify whether we are going to store integers inside the stack or float or character or whichever data type. So we have to, let's say I want to deal with all three possible data types. That is, I want to store integers, I also want to store float, and I also want to store characters. In that case, we have to declare three different arrays. One array for integer array, which is for the stack integer stack. The next array as floating point array, which is for the floating point stack, and third is the character array for the character stack. Now where the difficulty comes is that now I want to define the methods for the stack. That is, I want to write two functions for a stack, push and pop. Push is for inserting into a stack and pop is for removing elements from the stack. But here the problem is that because there are three different types of stacks available, I have to write 6 different functions. How 6? One is push int, push char, push float. So for each type of stack I have to write separate push function, and similarly the pop method should also be implemented in 3 different versions. But this is not a major issue because we are going to write the methods only once. This is a one-time task. The programmer will write the program once, and so he can write 6 methods. It's not a big effort needed, so he can do it. But the problem is that at the user level, so imagine that you have completed the implementation and now your object is provided to the user. So user is the consumer of your object. But from the user point of view, you should not complicate. You can complicate at the programming level because you are going to deal with the complexity, but when it goes to user level, you must provide a simple interface. But here the challenge to the user is that when he wants to insert into an integer stack, he must know which function to call for that. So he has to call push int for that. Similarly, to insert a character into the stack, he has to make a call to the pushchar function. So he has to remember the names of 6 functions to achieve this, which is not an ideal thing. But in C, if the same program is written, then this is the only way. You have to implement 6 functions, and the user should also properly remember and properly call the 6 functions. But in C++, with the help of polymorphism, we can simplify this thing. So what is simplified is that we still have to implement 6 functions. That is not changed. So you have to implement all the 6 functions so that we can manipulate the 3 different types of stacks. But where the simplification comes is that you can define all the 6 functions with the 2 names, that is push and pop. So push function, push is the name of the 3 push function, 3 functions for different data types. So whether I want to write the function for integer stack or float stack or character stack, I will use the same name, which is push. If you try it in C, you will immediately see a compiler error that function name is in conflict or some kind of an error, which is indicating that you can't use the same name for more than one function. But in C++, compiler will not complain this as a error, since it is aware that there is a facility of polymorphism implemented. So you can legally implement 3 different functions with the same name. So push will work for as even when you implement 3 different versions of the push, and similarly you can implement 3 different versions of the pop. Now the next major doubt you should get by now is that, see, if there are 3 push functions and 3 pop functions, how the compiler will know which one to execute at the time of function call. Let's say I'm making a call to push, then out of the 3 push functions, which one will be executed? That will be decided based on the data. So when you pass integer to the push function, the compiler will recognize that since you are passing an integer, you must be intending to insert into the integer stack. So it will invoke the version of the push function which is associated with integer stack. Similarly, when you pass the floating point value, and it will be automatically associated with the variant of the push function which takes the floating point argument. So based on the type of argument you are passing, the compiler will associate the function call. This is the idea of a polymorphism, and also it's also called function overloading. So we will deeply in detail discuss about function overloading and polymorphism later in our syllabus. And in C++, there is also support for runtime polymorphism and compile time polymorphism. What we just discussed is actually a type of compile time polymorphism, but there is also another type called runtime polymorphism. We will be discussing that concept later. This is about polymorphism. Next concept of OOPS is inheritance. So we by now you are aware that inheritance is about reusability. So inheritance is the process by which one object can acquire or inherit the properties of another object, and this concept is important in order for us to utilize the concept of classification. So classification is something that we do in our day-to-day life. So we classify everything. For example, if you take apple, it can be classified as a fruit, number 1, and a fruit can be classified as a food. So in this way everything can be classified in some category. So for example, if you take a person, that person is either a male or female, and similarly he can be classified as a aged person or a young person, a student or employee. So in this way we tend to classify everything, and inheritance is essentially a way of classifying class objects, and it's very helpful to simplify and also for reusability. I will show you an example of how inheritance is helpful in facilitating reusability. Take the case of the same example that we had previously defined, a student class. Now if you go for the classification of the student, then we will start with the university. So university is a starting point for a student to exist, and under the university we may have branches like SEE, SCBT and SOC. Under each branch we will have students and staff, and if you go further, then the staff can be further classified into teaching and non-teaching staff. So in this way we can go on to create a classification. And the advantage of classification is that, see, when you want to define, let's say you want to add a new student into this class. There is a class called student here, and we want to insert a new student. And while doing so, you don't need to tell which branch he belongs to. You don't need to tell under which university he is studying, because that is already part of the hierarchy. So you don't need to repeat all the previous details. They are all automatically included as part of the student. That's what we are referring as inheriting. So the student class will inherit all the details of the base classes. So university SEEE will be automatically inherited by the student. That is the advantage. You don't need to repeat everything. You only include what is unique for the class. So for the student class, you only have to state what is unique for the student, like his name, register number, the gender. So those details which are unique has to be included, but you don't need to specify which branch he is studying, or you don't need to specify which university he is studying. So with this, I am completing the discussion on the object oriented concept. So as a recap, what we have discussed is that OOPS comprise of the various concepts of abstraction, encapsulation, inheritance, and polymorphism. And abstraction is about simplifying, that is, you hide all the complications or complex implementation details, so that the user is able to use the objects in a simple way. And encapsulation is about binding the code and data together, so that no external manipulation is possible. No, whatever the way that is specified by the methods, they are the only ways we can manipulate the data. So the data cannot be accessed in any other way or by any other method outside the class. That is encapsulation. And inheritance is about facilitating reusability. So you can define a hierarchy or a classification, so that at any level, when you want to add a new element, that new element will inherit all the existing elements. So you don't need to keep repeating the same details again and again. And that is what the concepts of OOPS. Thank you.